This is also a story about a shogun from Japan. He was a warrior. It was a time in ancient Japan of the warlords. Different warlords fighting with each other. Each one had their own kingdom trying to conquer the land. Now this guy is very ambitious, very determined, very focused, and a great warrior. His ambition is to become the shogun, the ruler of the land, the greatest ruler ever. He conquers every kingdom one by one, then one kingdom is left. They hold out against him. But one time he gets his whole army ready and together they attack it. I don't know how many times they have tried before, they have not succeeded, but this time the attack is so ferocious, they win. Victory is his. Now the war is over, he's taking a survey of the battlefield. So he's on his horse followed by his generals and soldiers, and he's surveying his battlefield. All around him is death, dead bodies. People who are suffering and mourning and dying even now. And in the middle of that, he rides his horse, and he's happy. He's happy. Now watch, now what's happening here? Suffering around you, but you're in happiness. Do you follow? What has he done literally? He has dropped all thoughts of pain. He has. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, all right? But I'm telling you what's happening here factually. He's on his horse, surrounded by dead bodies and suffering everywhere, but there is not a single thought of suffering in his mind. The thoughts in his mind are all of victory, achievement, ambition. I've done it. He's happy. So in a way, he's released all thoughts of suffering. He's happy. Now they go through a little bit. And he says to his generals, isn't this the place where the wisest man in Japan lives? Isn't this the place? And they say, yes, it must be. So he says, okay, go find him. I have a question that he possibly can answer. So they go find the address and they start on this journey, and eventually this shogun, his general and the soldiers, they arrive at the gate of the monastery. The gates are closed. He barges in. He doesn't care about anybody else because he's the shogun. He's still in happiness and he's accomplished what he wanted. You see, he's feeling so fulfilled and so great. This is the best day of his life. And in he walks, and the Zen master, the wisest man in Japan, is sitting there, surrounded by a few students. And the shogun walks up and he stops there, and everything becomes silent. People stop talking. And he looks at the old man and he says, listen, are you the wisest man in Japan? And he says, well, if you have heard that, it must be true. Must be true. Right? How can I help you? So the shogun says, I've always had a question which nobody could answer for me. Maybe you can. Tell me what is heaven and what is hell. That's all he asked. Eh? Tell me what is heaven, what is hell. And what does the old wise man do? He looks at the shogun, surrounded by his generals, behind them the soldiers, all in battle gear with their swords. And he looks him in the eye and he says, questions wise as this, questions as wise as this are not meant for fools like you. I mean, look at the courage of the old man. Questions as wise as this are not meant for fools like you. And the shogun hears this, and what happens to him then? What happens to him? Suddenly he is in so much rage and anger that in a split second he's pulled out his sword and he's going to chop the head off. See how quickly it turned? He's in anger, rage, frustration. He's chopping the head off. Just as the sword comes to chop the head off, the master looks him in the eye and says, see, that is hell. You're in hell now. And the shogun gets it. He gets it. He understands what happened, and he stops, in mid-chop, mid-cut, he stops. He freezes. He just stops for a minute. He freezes. He's thinking what happened here. Now let's just look at this factually. What happened? In the external world, did anything change? I mean, he's still the shogun, isn't he? He still conquered this land. He still had that accomplishment. He should be as happy. But is he? No, he's not. He's forgotten all thoughts of victory and peace and happiness and fulfillment and ambition, all gone. Now the thoughts he's holding on to are what don't serve him. Do you get it? And how quickly did this storm come? Just like when I was driving the car, 10 minutes later it was raining cats and dogs. You see how quickly your thoughts can change, how quickly you can go from heaven to hell, how quickly life changes. So he's in hell. The master says, see, that's hell. He stops. He recognizes what's happened. And then what does he do? He puts his sword down and he goes, release, see? Letting go. A sigh. He releases that negativity. He releases the anger. As soon as he does that, his sword comes down, the master looks him in the eye again and says, see, that's heaven. Release what creates hell and you're in heaven. Release the negativity and you'll have positivity. Release the doubt, you'll have faith.